Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I've been at a bit of a crossroads of late in terms of trying to find a camera system that can meet my dog photography needs. And when I say that, it's mainly I enjoy taking pictures of like my dog running towards me, and all the systems I've tried so far have had variable success rate. And the system that I'm been currently running with, the Canon R8, I've had the second camera of that since about May, so about 6 months, and it's been okay. It's probably been the best camera that I've used for capturing that kind of photography, but I would say I'm still striving to get better hit rate performance, and certainly in the close quarters type arrangement. Like I find when my dog runs towards me, she's most expressive as she gets closer to the camera, and it's those shots that I feel at the moment my camera and lens combination just doesn't seem to be able to deliver for me. So I was at the point with the Canon R8 where the only thing that I hadn't tried or had left to try was to get a native RF lens, because I have tried a few of the EF-L lenses, so as well as the 135mm f2, I've also tried the 70-200 f4 and the 70-200 f2.8 Pro L lenses, obviously adapted using the EF to RF adapter. But both of those lenses had issues and I had to return them, and also even though I think the f4 version was working better than the f2.8 version, it was still suffering or struggling in that close quarters environment. So as I said, the only course of action if I wanted to stick with the Canon was to get a native RF lens, and probably the 70-200 f2.8. I'm only a hobbyist photographer, I'm only really doing this for fun, and it just seemed that it was quite an expensive investment to get that lens. So I was at the point in time where I had to stick with the Canon or twist and try something else. So I decided to just stick with the Canon for now and try something else, although I did actually film a video where I was going to get rid of the Canon, but I've since decided to just hold on to it just to see whether I can find something better, because the R8 does a lot of things well. Like I'm filming on this now because I really find that it's good for vlogging. So I looked at obviously what options I hadn't considered yet. Like I haven't considered any of the Nikon bodies, but I actually decided to try another Sony A9 or an A9 Mark II this time around, because I feel that with what I know now in terms of what settings you need to freeze action, like shutter speeds of over 1/2000th of a second, for instance, for reliably freeze an action, I felt like maybe the A9 could deliver what it didn't before, and as well as perhaps using smaller autofocus points rather than hoping using like wide or zone focusing on the A9 that it would pick up my dog running towards me automatically. So reverting obviously to more older techniques of putting a spot on a subject and getting it to track it that way. So I opted for an A9 II this time, because if you have been following my channel for a while now, I had issues with my original A9 and I had to go off for repair to where I bought it from, and then on to Sony for them to fix the issues that I was having with it. So because I'd had problems with the A9 before, I was hoping the A9 II was going to just offer a little bit more refinement, just hoping that the A9 II would have solved a lot of the issues I had with my original A9. But obviously I got rid of the A9 before. What's changed this time? Well, I guess when I tried the original A9, I was still looking for a camera that would do it all, you know, travel, vlogging, hiking, action. I was really hoping for that elusive hybrid camera that would meet all of my needs. Well, now I've got other cameras that fulfill certain needs. So I've gone away from the thinking that just one hybrid camera is going to deliver for me. So like I've got my Ricoh GR3 for for more compact, lightweight carries. I've got my Canon 5D for that old school DSLR looking images. I've got my GFX 50S for adaptive manual focus lenses and for when I want maximum dynamic range, generally for subjects that don't move that fast. And then I've got my Olympus system still, which is still great for macro. So now all I need really is a camera that can deliver in that action space, and more specifically that my dog running towards me. That's all really the principal need for this camera. And obviously it is now my main vlogging camera, this Canon R8. So I was looking for a camera that could potentially replace that, because obviously if the A9 II delivers, I probably would sell the R8 in order to fund better glass for the A9 II. Bought the camera here, Sony A9 II with an 85mm f1.8 lens from MPB. I got a good deal, to be honest, on this A9 Mark II because it's got a slight issue. And the issue is, to be honest, it's not that bad actually. It's just that the D-pad, the left-hand button, is a little bit mushy and it doesn't like click, but it still works. And I didn't really find that an issue, to be honest, in normal operation. So I received it last week. As I was already familiar with the camera and I knew what settings I wanted to try differently this time around, and I've taken this out on a few dog walks now and done quite a lot of sequences of my dog running towards me. I can safely say that I'm not convinced the A9 II is going to deliver it for me. I'm going to return it. So let's dig into some of the reasons. I think even though with my experiences to date with AI subject detection, like with the OM1 that I had, the OM3, and now with the Canon R8, these cameras with AI subject detect, they do a great job at detecting, but what I found is that doesn't necessarily translate into hit rate. But what it does do is it does, I find, keep the target focus box stuck to your subject. So it's almost giving the camera the chance to, if it can deliver focus to the spot that you want, that it will be hopefully on that spot that it's detected. And the problem with the A9 II is they don't have that AI subject detection. Yes, they've got animal autofocus, human autofocus, but still generally it's relying on you, certainly in my case, to put a box on the subject. And then certainly on the runs that I tried, it's not until my dog was large enough in the frame that it would then switch to the box on the eye. But before that, it would stay as just like a square box. And like I said, I've tried zone, I tried wide tracking as well, but for me those modes don't seem to work with my dog. They don't seem to pick her up until the last minute, or in terms of zone, it had a tendency to just pick the ground rather than the subject moving through the scene. So I stuck to expandable flexible spot. I put the spot on the dog, and then invariably I found that if it didn't stick to it, it just drifted it off and it never recovered back onto where I wanted the camera to focus. And at least with AI subject detection, I do find that the detection box does stay generally on the subject that you want it to stay on. Whether the focus hits that spot is another matter, but I do feel that it's trying to set it up more for success, because if it drifts off like it did for me on the A9 II, it doesn't really recover. And I was quite surprised actually that the A9 II didn't seem to be as good as even I remembered with the A9 in terms of hit rate with my dog running towards me. And the two walks I've done this week, I wouldn't say as well that my dog was particularly fast in those tests. She was generally just trotting towards me rather than running fast. So I've even got less confidence that this camera will be able to deliver for me. And to be honest, even if it did exhibit slightly better autofocus, I still don't think I would keep it, purely for the second point that I'm going to talk about. And that's basically, I was really taken aback actually how poor the results were in low light conditions. Like, I've had the Canon R8 now for about 6-7 months, and I actually did an indoor event the other day where it didn't really perform that great. But to be honest, I was at ISOs of 25,600, and it just didn't really deliver for me in those conditions. But I find in low light conditions where the ISO is at like 12,800, generally with the combination of Lightroom and denoise, etc., I can clean up the image quite well. But below that, I don't really notice the noise all that much with the Canon R8. But with the A9 II, I could visibly, it was almost reminding me that I was shooting with Micro Four Thirds, because the noise was really visible at ISOs as low as 2000. So obviously when I was shooting in low light and the ISO was up to 6,400, 10,000, the image was just terrible, and it just didn't seem as well the focus to latch onto my dog's eye that well at all. And I don't think the lens that I have is a particularly good copy of the lens. Like, when I first got the camera, I took it out locally just to do some static tests, and I was just, again, really disappointed with the results that I was getting. It's like it's IBIS as well. It's just not a very good version of IBIS, because obviously my Canon R8 doesn't have IBIS, and I'm still able to get sharp shots with that quite comfortably. But I just really have struggled with the A9 II, and I thought it was the lens, and in part it was, because when I did some static tests on a tripod indoors, it's extremely soft at f1.8. It's like unusable at f1.8, and it's not until you stop down to f2.8 or even f4 that you start to get acceptable shots, which is a real shame, because I really like the look of that lens. Like, I used it before, or a different version of the lens when I first had the A9, and I absolutely love the 3D kind of pop you get with that lens. So I knew that going into all my tests with my running dog, so I made sure that I set the aperture at f2.8 minimum, and in many cases I switched to f4 because I wanted sharp shots. I was just testing to see whether the autofocus performance was where I wanted it to be, and unfortunately it wasn't. The low light performance, as I've said, compared to the R8 is pretty abysmal, and critically, I'm just not getting the cleanness and the sharpness of images that I've been able to achieve with the R8. It's not looking good, to be honest, for the A9 II, and I've already initiated the return, so I'm well prepared to take the hit of sending it back to MPB this soon after getting it, because I'm just not convinced it's gonna deliver in any of the areas that I need it to deliver. So this time around, was there any benefits of using the A9 II? Or what I was looking forward to actually with the A9 II? Obviously, it's a lot better build quality, I find, than the R8. Like, the R8, I'm not sure whether I would trust it in wet weather conditions, whereas obviously the A9 II's got a lot better weather sealing compared to the original A9 and compared to the R8. It's also got 2 card slots, so I was looking forward to being able to be a bit more confident when shooting events that if anything happened to one card, I'd be okay, because it would have been backed up to the second card as well. I didn't need to charge the battery at all with the A9. It came pretty well charged, and it's still at about 70% after all the tests and hundreds of images that I've taken with it while I've been testing it. So it's compared to the R8 now, where I charged the battery before I started this video, and it's already showing that it's down to about half, and hence why I've got 3 batteries for the R8, because the battery life I do find for certainly video in action to be quite poor. I took it to London the other day, the R8, and if you're just walking along doing like travel static shots, I didn't find I needed to change the battery at all. But I think when you're doing more demanding activities, the battery life does suffer in my experience. The A9 II's got the benefit of having certainly with the updated firmware, when you turn off the camera, you can set it so it does close the shutter to protect it from dust. And I do quite like that feature, which I think the R6 Mark II's got, but not the R8. And funny, I think the best thing I found with the A9 is that even though the files are larger than the Canon, Lightroom just handles them so much faster. Like, it was pretty much instant, them loading, so I could easily just review them all and cull them quickly. Whereas I find with the Canon files, for some reason, they take ages for Lightroom to process and load. I'm starting to think whether it's due to the fact that I use compressed RAW all the time. I think I'm going to experiment with not using compressed RAW to see whether that helps speed up the editing workflow. I think as well the other sticking point, which has got pros and cons with the A9 II, is you can only flip out the screen in that direction. This is brilliant for photography. I much prefer this over a fully articulating screen, although it is really handy from a video vlogging perspective to have that articulating screen. And obviously as well, you can flip it in on itself as well to protect the screen. And I did find, even though I do quite like shooting in that format, it's quite easy with the R8, for instance, to shoot it low down in that orientation with the screen flipped down. So I have adapted to using the articulated screen, but there are definitely some positives, certainly for photography, for just a normal articulated screen. And thankfully the GFX has such a screen. This is the first video I've done with my new lens on the Canon R8, the 24-70 f4. I've certainly noticed that it doesn't jitter as much or make as much noise as the old 28-105 that I'm using. So I am glad in a way that the R8 is going to be staying with me for a little bit longer, because I do love the video quality that comes out of this camera. Certainly for a hobbyist like me, I don't really have to bother with grading it or anything. I just pretty much use it as it comes out. Yeah, so where does this leave me? Obviously I'm going to return the A9 Mark II and I'm going to keep the Canon R8. The only other system, as I mentioned earlier, that I haven't tried yet is the Nikon system, but I'm not convinced it's going to offer me any better performance than I can achieve with the Canon R8, to be honest. And even though it does have the benefit of having more third-party lenses available for it, like I was really interested to see that Tamron are releasing their 70-180 G2 f2.8 lens for the Nikon system. But after reading around, I think for those challenging situations like fast erratic subjects moving towards the camera in low light, I think those third-party lenses, from what I read, do tend to suffer compared to the native pro lenses associated with a camera system. So there's no real benefit for going to like Nikon or Sony for cheaper lenses when you would need to get, like for instance, the pro level 70-200 f2.8 lenses. And across the main camera systems, that lens is pretty much a similar price, no matter what system you end up with. I was hoping in a way that the Sony would have been good enough, because the one thing that I was considering getting, which would have been cheaper, would be to get their 135mm G Master lens, because that's about half the price, I think, is to like a 70-200, and that would have done probably most of my dog action photography. And then I could have just got like a third-party zoom lens to cover other like non-action purposes, so I wouldn't have needed the 70-200 in the Sony system. But I'm not sticking with the Sony, so that option is off the table. So what am I going to go with instead? I think I'm going to have to twist and get the Canon RF 70-200 f2.8. The 135mm Canon EF lens is good enough for occasional use, so I think the versatility and flexibility of the 70-200 f2.8 will deliver it for me. And I think after spending the money on the Sony A9 II and the 85mm lens, for that not to deliver, I think I'm probably okay with spending the money on the RF native lens to hopefully achieve more consistent and accurate autofocus, and to provide me more flexibility when out and about. I think as well it'd be nice to have 70mm, because whilst I do like the 24 to 70 f4, it is a little bit weak after 50mm. Like, you need to stop it down to f5.6, I find, to get it to be acceptably sharp. So I think the 70mm will complement it. But anyway, I think that's all I wanted to cover. That's definitely put to bed, I think, any notions of getting any other Sony systems. I'm at the point now where I'm not convinced that another camera is going to do any better, really. It's going to be a case of getting one of those RF native lenses to see whether the communication between the modern body and the modern lens would drive the autofocus of the lens to perform better in that close quarters environment that I'm interested in. So that's all I have for this video. As always, thanks for watching. Bye for now.